Hi everyone, I'm Dr. John Douillard and welcome to our free training on circadian medicine. You know, circadian medicine won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2017, so there's a huge amount of interest in understanding our connection between the light and dark cycles, the rhythms of nature. So in Ayurveda, the whole concept of what we call Ayurveda 101 is how to live in sync with the natural cycles, to go downstream with the current. How many of us feel like life is a struggle? How many of us feel like at the end of the day we're exhausted? How many of us feel like, we work through the week and then we find ourselves exhausted at the end of the week only to recover on the weekends? So this is the whole point of circadian medicine, and really Ayurveda 101 is how to live in sync with the natural cycles and go downstream with the current, so you feel refreshed at the end of every day. And that's what I hope to accomplish in this free training, is to give you kind of the understanding of a daily routine, a seasonal routine, and a monthly lunar cycle routine of how to live your life in sync with these natural cycles. It's really, really important. Studies recently show that 82% of our genes actually turn on and off at different times of day. That's 82% of our genes. That's like most of our genes. And we're just in the infancy of understanding what circadian medicine is and how powerful the most subtle influences are. And this is really the hallmark of Ayurvedic medicine, is that the things that seem to be the most subtle definitely turn out to be the most powerful. A great example of that is the microbiome, right? We can't see these little bacteria, but they turn out to be the drivers of pretty much everything. Our mood, what we eat, what we think, our energy, our vitality, our immunity, all driven by these little invisible bugs, which Ayurveda talked about thousands of years ago. They talked about invisible microbes called krimi, and they talked about how to treat them, not by killing them. They said, hey, you know what you need to do is balance the host, change the environment, so we don't allow the undesirable bacteria, krimi, to proliferate. How profound is that? And so much of what Ayurveda talks about is really understanding the cumulative effect of the most subtle influences on the body. And I want to share with you a study that I think is, one of the more fascinating studies, which was they took a group of mice, and they had two groups. One group healthy mice, and one group they actually kind of severed their circadian clock, and they had no connection to the rhythms. And the mice that had their circadian clock, they're normally nocturnal. Now these mice were up all day, eating all day, incessantly, and they started to create an imbalance of diabetes and obesity in these mice, where the healthy mice stayed pretty much healthy, right? And then they took a group of humans, and they had them go on a transatlantic trip to Israel and back, there and back, nonstop. And they took a picture of their microbes before they went and when they came back. And what they found was when they came back, their microbes had been altered significant just by the jet lag stress. Again, point being, how subtle are these circadian rhythms, right? And when they took a picture of those microbes, their microbes, the human microbes, started to shift to become more like the mice that had their circadian clock severed. They became more obese and diabetic, like. And then they took some of the fecal matter from these humans and they put them in the healthy mice. And in short order, the healthy mice now started showing signs of obesity and diabetes. Once again, just suggesting that it is so critically important for us to understand how the subtleties of our being in sync with the natural cycles, how the impact is on our health and our longevity. I'm going to talk about some of the science here as we dive in. The first training today is going to be really more about the daily cycles, the Ayurvedic clock, we call it. I'm going to go through each of the different times of day and what we should do and the science behind it. And the next training will be more on the seasonal cycles, the bigger, more global cycles. and how we can live in sync or not in sync with those. And then finally, we'll do another training on the lunar cycles and the nighttime cycles and talk about that, which is really important. And then we'll do a final video to kind of wrap it all up and tie it all together and give you some really important tips. Okay, so that's sort of the free training plan. Stay with us. Each of these, we'll try to keep them around 30 minutes. I tend to sometimes go a little longer, but I'll do my best, 30, 40 minutes, so I won't take too much of your time. Okay, so here we go. In the first understanding of this is understanding the Ayurvedic clock. So let's think for a second. 6 o'clock in the morning is sunrise, and 6 o'clock at night is sunset. Okay, let's have that in your mind. Okay. So 6 o'clock in the morning is the first cycle of the day. It's the sunrise. It's the beginning of the daily cycle. Every cycle in nature has a beginning, which always starts with what Ayurveda calls kapha, or what we call spring. Spring is nature's new year. Everything starts with spring. Everything starts to grow in the spring, right? And then we have summer, and then winter is when things wind down. So we start the beginning of our day in what we call the spring or the kapha cycle. The kapha cycle, kapha is earthier and heavier. It's a heavy time of the day. It's when the structural integrity is stronger. The morning is a time when the muscles, in fact, are stronger. I actually taught in the Soviet Union years ago, and they told me they did all their physical training techniques and heavy lifting in the morning because the muscles were in fact stronger. It's a time where we go, dig ditches and plow fields and do all of our heavy lifting when the muscles are stronger in the morning, when we have that ability to do that before it gets too hot and you don't want to do the physical labor. So turns out the very best time to exercise is first thing in the morning. It's a time of day where 75% of the people who exercise on a regular basis do it first thing in the morning. The muscles are stronger at that point in time. I took my couple of years ago, my daughter was in middle school, and she wanted to go to the gym with me in the morning, and I oftentimes go really early in the morning, and she said she wanted to do it. So I took her to the gym. We woke up really early, and I guess we got there at 5 o'clock or 5:30 or something. She didn't last, by the way, in this whole procedure after middle school, but and there was just nobody on the roads. It's dark, you're driving to the gym, and then you turn the corner and you get to the gym parking lot, and it's packed with people. And she was like, "What's going on?" And I said, "People wake up and they go to the gym in the morning. It's like really busy. It's one of the busiest times of the day for the gym to be active." So people who do it regularly do it first thing in the morning. It's a very real thing. So this is a great time to do it. It's also a really important time to eat breakfast. A lot of people think that we shouldn't eat breakfast, and this is an important concept as well, particularly today with the world of intermittent fasting. Everybody is telling us in the world of health that we should have longer trips between supper, between our not eating meals. So there's these things called 16-8, where you would not eat for 16 hours and then eat for 8 hours, and there, where we have a longer period of fasting, which would then help the body burn fat, move into autophagy, which is self-repair, possibly boost stem cells, which is rejuvenative cells. All these really cool things happen. Well, and they say, well, the easiest way to do that is just to basically skip breakfast, because you wake up, have breakfast. Some even say have coffee because it doesn't block autophagy. And then you have no breakfast or coffee for breakfast, and then you just have lunch and supper, and then those are your 2 meals, and you have a longer non-eating period of time, a time-restricted eating plan to get you to burn fat and all of that. I am a big believer of helping us burn fat, and we're going to talk about when that happens in a circadian rhythm way as we get into this course. So don't just misunderstand me. But most of the experts say just skip breakfast, and I'm going like, wait, that's not a really good idea, because the science, in terms of Nobel Prize winning circadian science, is now telling us that breakfast is a really important meal of the day, and there's a ton of studies to do it. And I wrote an article on, I think, the 10 top reasons why we should eat breakfast, and here's just a sample of some of that science. They found that breakfast helps maintain your ideal weight. In one review of over 19 studies with over 93,000 participants, found that skipping breakfast was associated with being overweight and obese. Another study showed that breakfast enhances cognitive function, which is really important. And it supported cognitive function, mood, and satiety, where you're not hungry all day long. Another study said that breakfast helps burn carbs during exercise. They gave a breakfast to a bunch of cyclists 2 hours before they went on the workout, and it turned out they burned more carbohydrates and more of their stored fat during the workout and performed significantly better. Another study showed that breakfast reduces the risk of adult onset diabetes, which is the epidemic of our time is pre-diabetes. 1/3 of the American population is pre-diabetic, and 90% of those folks, over 100 million of them, don't know that they have that condition. And they did a study with over 4,000 adult men and women spread over 9 years, and they found that the ones that skipped breakfast had a significant increased risk of type 2 diabetes, which is the one you can fix with diet and lifestyle, right? Another study showed that breakfast reduces the buildup of arterial plaque. Like, who knew that just having breakfast, and like how easy it is to just not eat breakfast because you wake up, you're not hungry, go to work. These are circadian rhythms, and again, we go against the grain. We plow upstream, we pay a price for plowing upstream. Breakfast also reduces high blood pressure, which is sort of really interesting, and I'm going to talk about blood pressure here in more detail in a minute. And breakfast also reduces the risk of metabolic syndrome. What's metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome is abdominal obesity, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and increased cholesterol and triglycerides. So breakfast can just help you reduce that, which is pretty amazing. And it also showed in one study that it extends your life. Just having breakfast, over 34,000 men and 49,000 women ages 40 to 79, they found that skipping breakfast was associated with increased risk of mortality, death from circulatory diseases, and all kinds of death with men and women, all cause mortality, right? So how crazy is that? So really important, right? So this is the 6 to 10 time a day. We need to have a nice relaxing breakfast. It's really important to have a relaxing meal at that time of day, and try to get your workout. This is a great time to do your yoga, your breathing, your meditation. You can walk your dog, you can jog, you can do I have a routine called the 12-minute workout. I have a whole section on my website at lifespa.com about how to do nasal breathing workouts to make sure that you don't push yourself too hard and break your body down to build yourself up, all those things. But morning exercise, just like morning breakfast, has been shown to have like all kinds of benefits. And here's a sample of some of those studies. One study showed that morning exercise gives you better blood sugar regulation. Another one increases parasympathetic tone. What's parasympathetic tone? You have parasympathetic and sympathetic. Fight or flight goes up when you're stressed out. Parasympathetic goes down. Parasympathetic is your rest, digest, rebuild, and reboot your whole nervous system and physiology. So when you exercise in the morning, you actually increase parasympathetic tone, recovery, support, repair, rejuvenation, better digestion throughout the entire day, just by getting moving in the morning when the kapha time, which is when you have more muscular strength, is happening first thing in the morning, right? Like, how cool is that? When you think about, like, the longer you lie in bed, the more stiff, the more tight, the more tired, the more stiff you become, right? And that's because kapha is increasing in your body, which is muscular strength, structural integrity between 6 o'clock and 10. If you sleep till 10, you're going to have the maximum amount of this heaviness and stiffness, stiff shock absorbers that help you handle the stress of exercise, but they make you stiff if you lie in bed too long. So we're going to talk about in a bit here, why we should be up before that 6 o'clock time, before the sun rises, because pretty much every culture on the planet does that. We wake up after the sun many times, which is sort of interesting that our culture misses the beginning of every day, sort of an interesting thing. Other studies show exercise in the morning increases better lung capacity and endurance, gives you less daytime hunger, increases your afternoon strength. So do like a whole bunch of stuff, right? So that's the 6 to 10 time, right? And then there's the 10 to 2 time. This is the pitta time. The sun's in the middle of the sky. It's heating us up. It's telling us that this is a really good time for us to actually digest our food. Studies show that there is all kinds of benefits between having breakfast and lunch versus breakfast and supper or lunch and supper. The earlier you eat your food, turns out this is a better time for us to be eating our food. It's when the digestive system is turned on. Those biological clocks in our body that help us digest happen in the middle of the day, which is, I think, really fascinating and really important. So okay, here's my blood pressure story, right? I went for my first Ayurvedic consultation. It was back in 1984. Was my first official with a doctor consultation, and their nurse took my blood pressure, did like a workup, and it turned out at 27 years old I had high blood pressure, and I was in shock because I was meditating and doing yoga and exercising. I was doing triathlons and all this stuff, and I thought I was really healthy, but I wasn't. I had high blood pressure. It was like 135 over 95 or something like that. And so the doctor walks in. He was an Indian doctor, and he looks at me, looks at my blood pressure, and he says, "What do you have for lunch?" And I said, "Well, I have a busy practice, my first year in practice, and I said, I have a really busy practice. I have a really big breakfast. I have a really good dinner, but I'm usually running behind in my practice during lunch, and I eat something on the run and go, right?" And he said, "Go home, have a nice warm cooked meal in the middle of the day. You'll never have high blood pressure again." And I was like, whoa, wait. I was a little shocked by the whole blood pressure thing. I'm like, don't you have like an Ayurvedic pill for me to have for I can just fix this blood pressure problem, because it's like a real problem, right? And he says, "No, you don't need any pills or anything. You just go home, have a nice warm cooked meal in the middle of the day. You're never going to have this problem again." And I was like, okay. So I started doing that, and and here's the thing. This was my first year in practice, and I remember, and maybe you guys have felt this before in your life too. I felt like at the end of my day, I was so exhausted and so wiped out. I was 27 years old. And I remember just thinking in my first year of practice, going like, God, is this the rest of my life, where I just feel so wasted at the end of my day, And so as I started and then I would meditate, right? To kind of go home after a long day and meditate and then recover. And I was using meditation to recover from the stress that I incurred all day long, which made sort of no sense to me. Like meditation is supposed to be like a spiritual technique to enhance your full potential. And I was using it to shovel out all my stress in my life, which didn't make any sense, right? So I started doing the big lunch thing for my blood pressure, and all of a sudden I started having more energy throughout the day. And I started feeling, the same energy at the end of my day as at the beginning of my day, and I saw my blood pressure starting to go down. I was so fascinated by this, I started doing a study with my patients, having them eat big meals who had high blood pressure, and I saw a significant difference. And then I found studies now, and one study in the journal Circulation was evaluated, which was supported by the American Heart Association, with over 12,000 people, found that people who ate their food, 30% of their food after 6 o'clock at night, had 23% increased risk of developing high blood pressure and 19% increased risk of becoming pre-diabetic, right? Compared to the folks who actually ate in the middle of the day. And I was like, wow, there's not only did my little clinical study work, but many, many, many years later, we have now hard science suggesting it's a really good idea for us to have our big meal in the middle of the day. And here's why. The middle of the day is when you digest your food. Now, the time of day I'm going to talk about next is between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So we have 10 o'clock till 2 is the digestive time. 2 to 6 is when the nervous system, the brain, the vata comes in. And that brain says, I want 80% of my blood sugar, and I want it right now. And you had a salad in front of your computer. You ate on the run. You didn't take time to eat a really good, relaxing meal because you want to eat in front of your desk so you can leave work a little bit earlier and beat the traffic, or whatever it might be. So you race through your meal, or don't eat one, or have a salad because you're trying to lose some weight. You go into the afternoon between 2 and 6 when the vata, the brain, the nervous system needs fuel, and the brain goes, where's my fuel? And you didn't put any gas in the tank in the digestive time, the pitta time, the fire time between 10 o'clock and 2. So the brain goes, this is an emergency. It isn't like I can tell the vata time, the circadian clocks to not happen. These clocks are gonna turn on and they're gonna demand energy. And if you don't have it because you didn't eat a big enough lunch or any lunch or on the run lunch, your brain's gonna hit the alarm bell. And that alarm bell is going to be an emergency response. And that emergency response is going to pull down the menu and say, oh, here's how to get out of this emergency hole. And it could be crave dark chocolate, coffee, stimulants, sweets, chips, chocolate that they pass around the office, stuff like that, to get you out of that hole. So what happens is when you go in the afternoon and your blood sugar starts to crash because you don't have any gas in your tank and your brain's pulling as much fuel as it can in the afternoon time of day, which is really weird, I know, because most people say, in the afternoon, I'm exhausted, I'm so tired, and then I need this injection. Part of that, if you have, and this is interesting too, I would tell my patients for years, and when I would teach Ayurvedic, I've been teaching at a couple Ayurvedic colleges for decades now, I always say, the most important time of the day, and you want to ask your patients always, how do you feel between 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 o'clock in the afternoon? How do you feel at that time? Now, I'm not saying it's the most important time of day because your midday meal might be the most important time of day. Your breakfast might be the important time of day. Your exercise in the morning might be the important thing to do in the morning. So it's hard to say what's the most important because it's all cumulative, right? But the question you want to ask yourself right now is, how do you feel between 2 and 6 in the afternoon? Are you crashing and burning? Do you feel tired? Do you feel that you need an injection of some sweet chocolate chip of some sort to get you out of that hole? Are you pulling down that emergency menu, Starbucks, whatever it might be, right? And if that's the case, your blood sugar is crashing because you're craving something else, and it could even be a nap. And however you are predisposed to break down, you are going to, over time, express that predisposition. And for me, it was blood pressure. My blood pressure started to go up. I was 27 years old, doing everything right. I was vegetarian back then. I was eating, exercising, meditating, all this stuff. But my lifestyle, by racing through my day and not eating when my body needed to be fueled, and then in the afternoon, I had no gas in my tank. By the end of the day, I was wasted. Right? So when I said in the beginning of this course, how many of you feel exhausted at the end of your day? How many use meditation, yoga, and breathing to shovel out the stress as a stress reduction technique? And I'm going like, whoa, wait, why are we using those tools, which are human potential developing techniques, as stress reduction techniques? Why don't we use those tools to enhance our full human potential, our enjoyment and our contentment of life, so we don't feel exhausted at the end of every day? If you're exhausted at the end of the day, this is a circadian imbalance. And now the Nobel Prize winning science saying there's going to be doctors now who are going to specialize in circadian medicine. They're going to say, just like that doctor said to me, what do you have for lunch? Oh, you're eating on the run. Stop, have a nice big relaxing meal. We don't have to wait until the doctors become specialized in circadian medicine. We have thousands of years of time-tested wisdom with pretty much every culture on the planet teaching us how to live in sync with the natural cycles, right? That's a really beautiful and important thing. And so here we have the midday meal. We should be eating our biggest meal of the day at that point in time. So we have a full tank to go in the afternoon when the brain is kicking and saying, give me my fuel. And if you crash and burn in the afternoon between 2 and 6, you didn't put enough gas in your tank and you're crashing, you're triggering an emergency, life-threatening, degenerative response throughout that afternoon, and how you're genetically, predisposed to break down. In time, you will. It took me like a year of one year of practice and I was in big trouble, right? So I'm not like genetically, I don't think the most healthy person on the planet. I've had a lot of things along the way that I've had to use to help me stay healthy over the years. So that was one of my first wake-up calls, was that blood pressure thing. My blood pressure now today, 110 over 70, sometimes lower than that. I have to sometimes take salt to get my blood pressure up because I don't eat as much salt, and it's another thing. People used to have too much salt in their diet because of all the processed food. Now healthy people oftentimes don't get enough salt in their diet, and that was me. I was starting to get dizzy and I was not having any salt. So anyway, a whole nother point of it, my point being is my blood pressure is really, really low, right? So that's really, really interesting. And so anyway, more studies on why eating breakfast and lunch is so important. One study showed, read some more. One study showed that that people who are early eaters versus late eaters had 25% more energy and 25% more weight loss than people who were late eaters as well. In a big study with over 50,000 Seventh-day Adventists who are generally vegetarian, the meal timing was evaluated and they found that breakfast eaters lost more weight than breakfast skippers, large breakfast eaters lost more weight than large dinner eaters, and large lunch eaters lost more weight than large dinner eaters. Again, just the rhythms, the biological clocks of digestion turn on in the day and they turn off at night because we're not nocturnal. Basically, that's the point. And another thing I think, I'll talk more about this in the next lesson, is that the plants, the foods we eat, are also part of the circadian rhythms as well. I think they should have circadian refrigerators, and I'll tell you why in a minute. In other words, the food, the nutrients in the plants actually increase, right, during the middle of the day. And the bioavailability of those nutrients and those phytochemicals are more available, according to some really good studies, in the middle of the day. And then they start to wane in the afternoon and the evening. So you don't get the nutrition from your food in the evening as you did in the middle of the day. But then when you stick the stuff in a refrigerator and it's just dark, I don't think the food knows what's going on. So I think they should have a little clock that turns the light on in the refrigerator during the day and then not at night, or something like that. But we're not there yet. Okay, so that's the middle of the day between 10 o'clock and 2, and in the afternoon between 6 o'clock and 10. So between 6 o'clock and 10, well, we have the 10 o'clock to 2 and the 2 to 6. This is the Vata time of day, the time we really need that fuel. So if you're not thinking good in the afternoon, the question you have to ask yourself is, what did I have for lunch? Did I have a big enough meal? And I got to tell you that this is not circadian medicine, but it is important that if you relax and eat your food, you will digest it way more effectively than if you're eating on the run and gobbling your food down. If you eat a meal on the run and gobble it down, you're going to crash and burn and feel, really heavy and tired in the afternoon. And you're going to say, I can't eat a big lunch because I can't digest it. I fall asleep, so I have to eat like a salad or have a light meal and a cup of coffee to get through the day. And I'm telling you that if you put gas in your tank of your car and your car stalls, you don't stop putting gas in your car. If you put food in your mouth at lunch and then you feel tired afterwards, didn't really deliver energy for you, you don't stop eating, which most people do. You fix the digestive system and understand what went wrong with why I wasn't able to deliver that nutrition from my food into my nervous system in the afternoon, right? That would be a smarter thing to do, right? Which is what I write about in my Eat, Read book and all my articles, all of which are for free online, where I talk so much about how to understand digestion. And there's 3 factors really. There's how you eat, when you eat, and what you eat. In this course, we're going to talk about when you eat in a big way. I'll talk a little bit about what you eat in the next training coming up. But then there's the how you eat. I'm not going to really talk about that because I'm going to try to stick to circadian medicine and I'll bore you with a lot of ancillary stuff. But when you eat relaxed, you increase your parasympathetic digestive system. When you eat on the run gobblings, you eat your fight or flight, go up a tree, save your life nervous system. Nobody's ordering pizza when there's a bear chasing you. So we have to give your body a chance to actually neurologically digest your food, and that means sit down and relax and take time. So if you're crashing and burning because you didn't eat a big, because you ate a big lunch or something, and you say, I can't do that, first thing you do is stop, take time, and make that meal count. Eat whole foods, try to eat organic, non-refined, non-processed food. And if that still doesn't work, then start reading my articles about how to troubleshoot your digestion. And let's fix that problem, because if you don't put gas in your tank on a regular basis because you think that you can't do it because you fall asleep, let's fix that problem way early on so we don't end up having, like me, blood pressure problems for an entire life, which I was able to mitigate that way back when I was 27. And we've had a lifetime of no high blood pressure issues, which is, I thought, really, really cool. Okay, all right, so one more thing to talk about here is the idea of meals versus snacks. Real quick, if you eat a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a meal, breakfast and then an apple and then a lunch and then some nuts and then some dinner, your body will burn the meal and the snack and the meal and the snack and the meal and the snack. And what we really want the body to do between breakfast and lunch is burn fat. We really want the body to do between lunch and supper is burn fat. So if you have a breakfast and an apple and lunch, you're going to burn in between breakfast and lunch the apple. It's fine. The apples are good. If you have lunch and some almonds and then dinner, you're going to burn the almonds in between. You're just not going to burn your fat that day. And what we really want to do is help the body be a better fat burner, because fat is stable fuel, long-lasting fuel, sleep through the night fuel. Part of our circadian rhythms is to reset fat burning on a regular basis, and I'm going to talk about that in a seasonal sense in our next training video. But for now, don't forget about the idea that having a breakfast and then nothing till lunch and lunch, nothing till supper is part of the circadian rhythms, okay? And I have an ebook called the Weight Balancing ebook, which is the Ayurvedic approach to intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating. And it's been talked about for thousands of years, okay? This is the idea of intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating is nothing new. Ayurveda says that one meal a day is for yogis and 2 meals a day is for bogis, which is a working class heavy laborer who needs more fuel than the yogi who just can eat 1 meal a day. And then 3 meals a day is for a rogi, which is a sick person, mostly dead, in a hospital. So they don't even have a name for 4, 5, and 6 meal a day people eating snacks all day long, because you're mostly dead at 3, right? So we should be able to make energy last a whole lot better than we do. But we, 1980, subsidized wheat and carbs and starches and corn and got that really, really cheap. And everything on our food supply for the last 50 years has been sort of carb-based. So we have this big surge of carbs. We got really good at getting carbs, which give you quick energy and then drop you, which is bad. And then the pendulum has now swung in the dietary world to basically boycott carbohydrates or starches of all kinds. And then, of course, the pendulum is now into paleo and keto, where, as we'll see in our next training video, there's a seasonal understanding here that we're missing, which we're going to talk about in our next video. So stay tuned for that, okay? So in my weight balancing ebook, I give you a Ayurvedic time-tested plan. We did a study on it back in the year 2000 on exactly what happens if you have 3 meals a day and no snacks. And here's the plan. You start out real quick, and it tells you in the ebook, it's free, download it, give you worksheets and all the details and the study we did. But you have 3 meals a day, no snacks. And see how you do with that. Relax, take time, make lunch a little bit bigger. If that's good and you can handle that, no problem, then you go to the next kind of phase of the program, step 2, which is to make supper a little bit smaller. Supper comes from the word soup or supper, or supplemental. So it's always meant to be a smaller meal. So have a soup or a salad for supper with a nice, big, relaxing lunch and see how you do. If you can go from 3 meals a day, no snacks, and some folks need to start with 4 meals a day, no snacks, then they can go to 3 meals a day, no snacks, and then they can start making supper a little lighter. As long as lunch is a little bit bigger, and you're like, man, I'm still full from dinner, I don't need a big dinner too. So then you make supper a little bit smaller. And then if that's okay, then you try to make supper a little bit earlier, before 6 o'clock. Now you have from like 6 o'clock all the way till 7 o'clock for breakfast, and now you're fasting for 13 hours of your day. Boom, all of a sudden, we're in the whole intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating thing that's so popular today, right? And then the last piece of the puzzle is, if that's working really well, and this happened in our study group, half my study group said, hey, you know what? I don't even feel like supper. Can I skip it? So the next step is about 3 to 7 nights per week. If you have a nice, big, relaxing lunch, and that can be pushed back a little later to 2 or 3 even in the afternoon, and have that nice big lunch. If you haven't had a nice big lunch at 2 o'clock, are you really hungry at 5 or 6 o'clock for supper? Probably not. So you just have some water, maybe some non-caffeinated herbal tea, and go to bed. Now you're fasting from lunch all the way till breakfast, and you have that 16-8 kind of time restricted eating plan. But you did it in a way where you didn't shock your body. And their science shows that when you do shock your body that way, there's issues, gallbladder issues, and a whole host of issues that I've written about. And I've written some article about fasting and cleansing, and you can read about that. But you don't want to just shock your body, which we just do in America. Everything is extreme. These pendulums of diet extremely shift from one to the other. You have to be careful about that, right? So the idea is that the time restricted eating plan will happen naturally, and as you make longer trips, you're naturally going to burn more fat, and then off you go. And that's a really important understanding. So you can download that for free. That's all the details. And in our study, when we had people do that, we measured their anxiety, depression, cravings, fatigue, insomnia, and exhaustion after work, and of course their weight loss. They lost 1.2 pounds per week during the study. It was an 8-week study. And all those factors were significantly improved once they stopped eating meal, snack, which means energy crash, energy crash, energy crash. And they started going from meal to next meal, started burning fat in between the meals, and their blood sugar stabilized, their mood stabilized, their energy stabilized. They slept better because they were burning fat, because you need to burn fat in the nighttime. Think about it, having a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack, and you say, okay, now it's 10 o'clock and now I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to sleep for 8 hours and I'm not going to get fed for 8 hours. And the body goes, wait, do you know I have a feeding schedule? I get fed every 2 hours, meal, snack, meal, snack, meal, snack. How in the world do you expect me to sleep for 8 hours and not be fed? I've conditioned my body to get fed every 2 hours, right? So if you have meal and snack and meal and snack, you condition your body to be able to make longer trips, which allows you to sleep deeper. And I'm talking deeper. And deeper sleep, as we're going to talk about in our third video, is really, really important. And a lot of us don't get that depth of sleep that we really desperately need for a host of reasons, and we're going to talk about that in a circadian sense as well. Really, really important. Okay. So then a couple of things that happen is that Americans, what we do is we eat late. We eat in the evening. And from a circadian sense, this is really not a good idea. So between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, this is the second cycle between 6 o'clock and 10. So this is a time where kapha is increasing again, trying to calm you down, dial down the nervous system, amp up melatonin, decrease cortisol. The day's over, it's winding down. The cooks have gone home. There's nobody there to cook the food at that time of night. So the cooks are gone, and we don't have that. We don't have the ability to digest a big meal, which is why all the science I told you about weight gain happens when people eat the same exact calories for breakfast and lunch versus having, breakfast and supper or lunch and supper, same amount of calories. People who eat earlier lose 25% more weight because they're eating it in sync with their circadian rhythms, right? Really, really important. And that's why the Ayurvedic intermittent fasting program is not to just skip breakfast, because we talked about why that's all important, but you slowly dial down your dinner, which I totally get disturbs our home life, because we all come home, we want to sit down and have dinner with our family. And you know what we did with our kids? We have 6 kids. And my wife and I would always come home together, and we'd have a nice big lunch together, and then that whatever was left over for lunch would be on the stove. The kids would come home, they would eat that for their snack when they got home. Turned out to be a meal. That would give them blood sugar stability in the afternoon when the brain's going, where's my fuel? And if you give them Twinkies or chocolate chip cookies and milk as a snack, they're going to get energy, and then they're going to crash, and then there's just no way you're going to ever see them do any homework in the next couple of hours because their blood sugar is just all over the place. But if you give them a really good meal, and at that point after school at 3 o'clock, whatever it is, they'll eat anything at that point in time. And that'll give them blood sugar stability throughout the afternoon. So that's what we would do. And then the kids do need more food, so then we would sit down together. I would have a small, light, supplemental meal. I'm not saying that we need to eat and skip breakfast for your whole life. I'm just suggesting that the rhythm is a breakfast big enough to get you to lunch, the bigger meal of the day, the relaxing, all of them should be relaxed, but very relaxed at lunchtime, so you really relax. Nothing from lunch till supper, a nice small supplemental meal just to get you over that hump. I would sit down with our family, we'd have our meal, I wasn't like having to eat my food. I remember when I grew up, it was like, the moms and the dads, if I went to my house or it was like, that was like our parents, particularly dads in the old days, were like, they needed their food, right? And they were not super happy. And it didn't matter whose house I went to, it was always the same. They needed their food. Where now, like for me, with 6 kids, I was like, had my big meal. I didn't feel exhausted in my day, which I did when I was in, my first year of practice. I felt the same energy because I had no choice. I had 6 kids, I had homework to do with them and all that kind of stuff. But we would sit down, have a nice relaxing meal. I would have a soup or a salad or something light because I wasn't trying to pig out. Because I already had my big meal of the day. And that was one of the ways I was able to maintain, I think, good health and also not, eat big breakfast, big lunch, big supper, and then gain weight like we oftentimes do in America. We just eat too much. We have too many calories. One study said the average American eats, 100% more food than we need. So we all have to eat 100% of the food that we do need. Then the average American eats another 100% more calories than we actually need. And studies show if you just reduce that by 30%, you're still eating 70% more than you need. That all kinds of health benefits happen. I mean, calorie restriction is so well studied. It was so miraculous. That's why we see this big surge of intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating and all that happening today, because less food delivers all kinds of Nobel Prize-winning benefits like autophagy and stem cell activation. Mitochondria make more energy, cells live longer. All this crazy science happens when we go into starvation. Now, in a seasonal sense, there are times when we should eat more and eat less, and we're going to talk about that in our next video. So what I'm going to do for now, the next time of day is between 10 o'clock and 2, and that gets into our sleep cycle. So I'm going to hold off on talking about that cycle until our last video, where I actually get into sleep cycles and the monthly cycles, which I think is, that's not our last video, but it's the third video. And then we'll have one more video after that where we're going to give you some really cool tips and wrap things up. Okay, so that's it for this particular video. The takeaway here in this video: breakfast, exercise, whether it be yoga, breathing, meditation, walk, exercise in the morning. Big meal in the middle of the day. Take time to relax and make that meal count. In the afternoon, between 2 and 6, evaluate how you feel. If you feel overwhelmed, tired, exhausted, depleted, or craving X, Y, or Z, you didn't put enough gas in your tank, or you ate it on the run, or you're not digesting well. And the not digesting well, my Eat Weed book is a troubleshooting digestive guide, and I've written a ton of articles, all for free, that you can download and read to give you tips about how to troubleshoot and run a fine-tooth comb through your digestive system so you can eat a nice big relaxing meal in the middle of the day, have energy in the afternoon, and finish your day with the same energy as when you started. That's the plan. That's the goal. That's Ayurveda 101. It's the first half of our circadian cycle, of the daytime cycles. We'll finish that up later, but the next video is going to be about the seasons and how to live in sync with the natural cycles or the seasons. All right, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next video on how to live in sync with the seasons, which are so profound. You're going to be blown away by some of the science. All right, talk to you soon. I'm Dr. John Douillard. Do you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe and share.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.